I didn't believe in heaven. Not really. I believed in science protocols, bleeding control epinephrine, and rapid response. I believed in ventilators and triage tags. I believed in the human body because I had seen it fall apart thousands of times. But I did not believe in eternity until I died. My name is Dr. Juan Miguel Reyes. I'm a trauma surgeon from Cebu. I've done missions in Leyte after typhoons in Marawi after gunfire, and most recently in the dusty, God-forsaken border of Turkey and Syria, where I lost my pulse on the blood-stained floor of a makeshift field hospital. But my story didn't end there. And if you're still watching this, neither has yours. Do you know what it's like to feel your soul detach from your body? Not floating, not flying, but like something ancient inside you is waking up. It was not darkness that met me, but memory. Something more real than anything I'd ever touched. I remembered something I had forgotten since childhood, and I saw him. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before all this, I was a good man, or at least that's what people told me. I helped the poor. I treated the sick. I worked overtime. I sent money to my family. But inside, I was hollow. I had buried too many children. I had watched too many good mothers weep until their voices broke. And when no miracle came, I stopped praying. When the silence grew, I stopped believing. I stopped hoping. I told myself I was just being mature, that real life was brutal and random, and that faith was for the naive. My mother never gave up on me, though. 8 lords still prayed for me by name every single morning, her rosary beads worn and cracked like her knees. But I brushed it off. I told her God had more important things to worry about than one burned-out doctor with a crushed soul. If I only knew. The night before the airstrike, a child had died in my arms. She was 7, thin, shaking, her lungs filling with blood. She looked at me and said something in Arabic I didn't understand. Her father was shouting. Her mother collapsed. I closed her eyes and tried not to think. That was my life. That was my heart. Clinical, efficient, emotionally numb. I washed my hands and drank instant coffee like always. But something was different that night. The air felt charged. I didn't know then that the countdown had already begun, that the veil between worlds was already thinning. In the Philippines, we love to say we're a Christian nation. But if heaven is real, if hell is real, why do our streets echo with broken families, with children sniffing glue under footbridges, with suicide notes folded into school notebooks, with pastors stealing offerings, while addicts cry out for one more chance? Why are we numb to pain, desensitized to despair? We scroll through suffering like it's entertainment. We've learned to fake smiles in the name of resilience, but inside, we're shattering like cheap glass. And I was no different. I wore my stethoscope like armor. I carried my degrees like they could save me. But when that building shook, when the walls collapsed and concrete crushed my ribs, none of that mattered. The only thing that mattered was what I had never settled in my soul. I remember my last breath. I remember hearing my name being called. Not by my team, not by the nurses, but by someone else. Someone older than time. A voice like thunder and comfort all at once. And I remember the silence that followed. Not absence, but weight. Like love and fire and truth all pressing down at once. I saw things I cannot forget. I heard words I can never unhear. I came face to face with the reality that we all like to avoid. Heaven and hell are not metaphors. They are destinations, and the choice is ours. I did not expect to return. I thought my life had ended, but it hadn't. Because God had one more task for me, something I didn't deserve, something I didn't ask for. He sent me back with a message. And if you're still breathing, still hearing this, then this message is for you too. Because the table is still set, the door is still open, but not for long. It started with a sound, not a scream, not an explosion, but a low groaning vibration, like the earth itself was exhaling grief. The power had gone out hours before, so the hospital was lit by battery lamps and one flickering generator bulb that hummed like an insect. I was checking the vitals of a teenage boy with third-degree burns when the ceiling cracked. I didn't think. I just moved. I pushed the stretcher toward the hallway, barking orders in 3 languages no one understood. Then I saw the nurse's face go white. She wasn't looking at me, she was looking behind me. And then everything fell. I remember heat, dust, screams cut off mid-sentence. I remember grabbing someone, but it slipped from my grasp. Concrete crushed my left side. My ribs snapped. Blood filled my mouth, pain blurred into numbness. My thoughts slowed down like film, melting in an old projector. I could feel my body dying, but I wasn't afraid. Not at first. I just felt sad. Not because I was dying, but because I hadn't lived. Not really. I had existed, functioned, helped, but my heart had been asleep for years. I had pushed God out, not in anger, but in exhaustion. I told him he wasn't needed anymore. That's when I heard the child. A little girl was crying. Not beside me, somewhere beyond the rubble, or maybe beyond this world. The kind of cry that goes past fear, past pain, into the raw place where innocence meets despair. Then I heard a whisper so real, it felt like breath brushing my neck. It said, "Get up." But I couldn't move. My legs were gone. My lungs were drowning inside me. I blinked once and the hospital disappeared. I stood somehow upright on a vast plain of golden dust. The sky above me was too wide, too deep. Time didn't exist. I looked down at myself. No blood, no scars. My white coat was gone. My ID tag was gone. I felt light and heavy at the same time. I turned and someone was standing there. "Juan," he said, "you finally made it." It was Uncle Pedro, my ninong. He had died when I was 12, collapsed from a heart attack while fixing his motorcycle. He used to bring me dried mangoes and read me psalms before bed. I hadn't thought of him in years, but there he was, smiling like he'd been waiting this whole time. "Where am I?" I asked. "This is not heaven," he said, "but it's close enough to hear its gates." I started to cry. I didn't even know why. Something inside me had cracked open. All the numbness of the last 10 years came flooding out. I fell to my knees. "I don't deserve to be here," I whispered. Then came the voice.
"You are not here because you deserve it. Juan, you are here because I love you."
I didn't see him yet, but I felt him. It was like being wrapped in every prayer my mother ever prayed. Like every mistake I had made was no match for the mercy in his tone.
"You have seen much suffering, my son, and it made you strong, but it also made you hard. I did not create you to be a machine. I created you to carry my heart."
I couldn't speak. I just wept. All I could think about was the boy who died in my arms, the girl I couldn't save, the lies I told myself to survive.
The world you loved was broken, but you stopped believing it could be healed. You stopped asking me to intervene, and still your name remained on my lips.
I looked up. The plain around me shifted. I saw silhouettes moving, some kneeling, some sobbing, some laughing in light. And then I saw the flames. Not fire as we know it, but judgment alive, burning with sorrow, not hate. I saw faces in the fire, a teacher who mocked God in his lectures, a rich man who paid his way out of guilt, a woman who sang worship songs every Sunday but never forgave her sister. They weren't screaming because of the fire. They were screaming because of what they had missed. I turned away. Uncle Pedro placed his hand on my shoulder. "It's not too late," he said, "but you must listen now."
I am sending you back, Juan, not to preach, but to witness. Tell them what you saw. Tell them what you felt, because time is running out.
It's strange, isn't it? How the moment you leave your body, you begin to remember things your soul always knew. There are no needles, no monitors, no beeping machines in that place. No ID, no status, no credentials. The veil is not made of cloth or mystery, it's made of mercy. And when you cross it, everything false is stripped away, and only the real remains. I didn't know if I was dead or dreaming, but I could feel that I was being seen. Not the version of me that smiled for photos or shook hands in conferences, but the raw, unscripted me. The version I tried to forget. I stood in that golden plain, and behind me was a dark sky rippling with sound prayers, regrets, laughter, screams. Ahead of me there was light. Not bright like the sun, but steady, alive, almost breathing. Uncle Pedro walked beside me. But it was quiet now. Even his footsteps made no sound. Then I saw something, no someone standing between me and the light. He looked like a man, but not just a man. His presence was heavier than gravity and yet gentler than a whisper. His face was veiled in radiant mist, but his eyes, they knew me. Not in the way doctors know a patient chart. No. He knew my fears, my flaws, my failures, my first prayer as a child, and the last angry thought I'd had before the airstrike. And somehow he didn't flinch, he didn't recoil. He reached out his hand.
Come, you are safe here.
I stepped forward, and something inside me trembled. Not out of fear, but recognition. I had never seen him before, but I knew who he was. I had heard his name in church, sung it in school hymns, even rolled my eyes at it in med school debates. But now, standing before him, I knew this was not a religion. This was not an idea. This was Jesus, and he was real. My knees gave out. I collapsed onto the glowing ground and cried harder than I ever had in my life. Not because I was afraid, but because I felt clean. For the first time, I wasn't performing. I wasn't protecting. I was just me. And it was enough.
I have been waiting for this moment, Juan, not to judge you, but to remind you who you are.
I looked up at him. "But I left you," I said. I stopped praying. I stopped believing. I blamed you for the pain I saw.
I never left you. I sat with you in every ambulance. I stood beside you in every operating room. I held you when your faith ran out. Even when you couldn't hear me, I was speaking.
Suddenly, visions surrounded me like living memories. I saw the night I cried alone at 17, thinking no one would ever understand me. I saw the moment I nearly crashed on the highway after my internship. I saw myself sitting silently on a rooftop considering ending it all, and a warm breeze brushed my face. I had thought it was the wind. It wasn't. He showed me the prayers of my mother, echoing like incense traveling across time, pounding the gates of heaven. I saw her whispering my name at 200 a.m., tears falling onto her Bible. I saw angels assigned to me, frustrated that I never called for them, and yet they never left.
You were never alone. Juan, even when you cursed my name, I whispered yours.
I stood slowly, ashamed but somehow strengthened. Why me, I asked. I'm not holy. I'm not even kind. I was angry, selfish. I buried myself in work so I wouldn't have to feel.
Because I do not choose the strong, I strengthen the willing. I do not need the perfect. I need the broken who will let me heal them.
I saw more people now, figures, appearing like outlines in the mist. Some weeping, some radiant. A young woman with Down syndrome glowing brighter than the stars. A former drug addict singing louder than choirs. A soldier who had shot a child but fell on his face in repentance before death. They weren't here because of what they had done. They were here because of who they had believed. And just as I began to feel overwhelmed by the holiness around me, the tone shifted. I heard a different sound. Not music, but screaming. I turned and saw the shadows. On the far edge of the veil, there were others, dozens, no, hundreds. Their eyes wide, their mouths open, in silent agony. They reached forward, but something held them back. Not fire, not chains, but choice. They had chosen distance over embrace, pride over mercy. They were not pushed away. They had simply never stepped forward. I covered my ears. I couldn't bear it.
This is why I brought you here, not to frighten you, but to commission you. There is still time, but not forever.
Jesus looked into me, and I felt the weight of eternity in his gaze.
Will you go back? Juan, will you tell them? Will you speak of what you saw? Will you remind them that I am not a story? I am the truth.
I nodded, not because I was brave, but because I finally understood what mattered. He didn't walk towards me. He simply was there. One moment I was trembling in the presence of heaven's border, and the next, I was engulfed in the undeniable presence of the one every soul secretly longs for. No trumpet, no earthquake, just peace so intense it made my chest ache, and love so pure it exposed every part of me I had tried to bury. Jesus stood before me, not the painting on my Lola's bedroom wall, not the plastic statue in a roadside chapel, not the blonde, blue-eyed figure from Western films, but radiant, dark-haired, scarred, and sovereign, clothed in humility and authority at once. His eyes were unlike anything I had ever seen, like oceans that had swallowed storms, like galaxies born from mercy, like history itself, remembering every act of kindness and every tear shed in silence. I wanted to fall again, but he stepped forward before I could move.
Stand, Juan. You are mine.
His voice didn't echo, it harmonized with everything around us, as if creation itself was listening. It wasn't loud, but it carried weight, like thunder wrapped in honey, like a lullaby sung by a warrior. I stood, weak but upright, exposed yet strangely comforted. I thought I wasn't worthy, I said. I walked away. I lived like you didn't matter.
You are not here because you were perfect. You are here because I never stopped pursuing you.
I tried to explain. I wanted to justify the pain I had felt, the surgeries where children never woke up, the corrupt hospital directors, the senseless deaths in my arms. But every time I formed a thought, his gaze dismantled my defenses.
I saw you hold that Syrian child as he died. I saw you bite your lip to keep from weeping. I saw the night you looked at the sky and said, if you're real, then show up.
My lips parted. I hadn't realized I said that. I had spoken it not as a prayer, but as an insult under my breath after losing a mother during childbirth. And yet he had heard me.
I was there, silent but never absent. Juan. I do not force the world to bow. I whisper until they listen. Love is not control, it is invitation.
He walked past me then, and as he moved, light followed him. It clung to him like flame without smoke. The scars on his hands were visible, raw, unhealed, yet beautiful. I looked at them and felt a pang of guilt. I didn't believe in you, I said. I mocked you. I tried to save lives without ever trusting you could save mine. He turned, not offended, but heartbroken, in the way a father aches for a runaway child.
And yet I saved you anyway, not because you loved me, but because I loved you first.
He lifted his hand and the air shifted. I saw images, flashes of people I knew. My father exhausted from working abroad, praying alone in a cramped apartment in Jeddah. My ex-girlfriend crying in a church pew, asking God to protect me. A stranger on a bus who smiled at me once and whispered, "God bless you," when I was about to break. They had all been part of the river of grace that carried me here.
You were never saved alone. I weave lives together. Juan. I use the broken to reach the lost. I speak through prayers, through pain, even through silence.
He stepped closer again, and this time I could not stop the tears. I wept not in shame, but in release. Every lie I had believed melted. Every wound I had hidden was seen and loved. He embraced me not with arms alone, but with presence, like every breath in the universe was leaning in to hold me. I felt warmth, like the sun, but purer. It entered my chest and poured into places I didn't know were empty.
You were created to know me, not just to serve or believe in me, but to walk with me, to hear my voice, to be loved as a son.
I whispered, "Why does the world feel so far from this? Why are we all so numb?" His eyes grew tender yet fierce.
Because the world has traded reverence for routine. People sing about me, but do not know me. They preach me without loving like me. They build churches but neglect the poor. They forgive with words but keep poison in their hearts.
I nodded. It was true. I had seen it. I had lived it.
But still I call them, still I wait. My blood still speaks, my cross still stands, and my arms remain open.
I closed my eyes. The weight of his glory was too much. Yet he was gentle, always gentle. He led me forward. We walked toward a river not of water but of light. People stood on either side. Some were laughing, radiant like children. Others knelt in awe. There were those I recognized. My old pastor who died of cancer. A security guard who used to share verses on paper scraps at the hospital. A janitor who had once given me a sandwich during night shift. They were there. Not because they were famous, not because they were sinless, but because they had believed, truly believed.
This is the kingdom, not built by power but by love, not by religion but by redemption, not by status but by surrender.
I looked across the river. There was music, if music could cry and laugh at once. There were homes, if homes could breathe peace. I wanted to cross. I wanted to stay. I had never felt more home. But then I remembered the flames. I remembered the faces in the shadows. And I remembered the ones back on earth, people who thought they had more time. People just like me. Jesus turned to me.
Juan, this is not your time, but I have allowed you to cross the veil for a reason.
I nodded, trying to hold on to this moment, this presence.
Tell them I am not dead. Tell them I am returning. Tell them I am real and I am enough.
He touched my forehead and warmth like lightning rushed through me. Not pain, just power. I felt bold yet broken, ready yet undone.
And when you speak, do not speak to impress. Speak to awaken. Speak from this place, and chains will break.
I wanted to stay, but he smiled and the whole realm responded.
I will be with you even there, even in the dark. Now go, speak.
I didn't want to leave. Every part of me longed to stay there, near him, near peace, near light, that had no shadows. It was like waking from a nightmare into a home I had forgotten I once belonged to. I felt safe, whole, truly known. I wanted to remain in his presence forever, but when he looked at me again, I already knew. I wasn't there to stay. I was there to be sent. Jesus walked with me to the edge of the veil. It shimmered like water, made of memory and eternity. Behind it, I could sense the earth heavy, noisy, broken. I saw flashes of my old life. The hospital's flickering lights, my mother crying alone in Cebu, my coworkers checking my pulse, not knowing my soul, had already stepped into the courts of heaven. I turned to him. Do they even want to hear it? I asked. They mock heaven. They joke about hell. They think they have time. He looked straight into me like he had when I first arrived.
They laugh because they forgot. They mock because they're hurting. Their hearts have grown hard from survival, but underneath that armor, they are still mine.
But I'm just a doctor, I said. I'm not a preacher. I'm not perfect. What could I possibly say that would make a difference?
Tell the truth, not polished, not religious, just pure. Tell them what you saw. Tell them who I am. Speak from the place where you met me.
I hesitated, not because I didn't want to obey, but because I was overwhelmed. How do you speak of eternity to people drowning in deadlines? How do you describe a flame that loves to those who only fear condemnation? But he gently placed his hand over my chest.
Your tears will speak louder than sermons. Your transformation will testify before your words do. Don't strive to be convincing, just be real.
I nodded slowly. Where do I begin? His answer came without pause.
Start with the nurse, the one who will stand next to you when you wake. She is questioning if I see her. Tell her, yes, I do. I heard her pray for her mother last week. I saw her give her last meal to a patient who had nothing. I have been chasing her for years.
I blinked in awe. I didn't know her name yet, but he already loved her.
Then tell your mother. Tell her I treasured every whispered prayer. Tell her I collected every tear. Tell her I miss her midnight talks, the ones she thought I wasn't listening to.
His voice softened, but carried the kind of weight only a father could carry.
She thinks I am silent, but I was always there watching over her son.
My throat tightened. I pictured Mama clutching her worn Bible, her cracked voice pleading for a miracle she didn't expect to see.
And tell your friend, the one who laughs too loud. Tell him I know his loneliness. Tell him he doesn't need to hide behind humor. I was there the night he almost ended it. I am not offended by his questions. I am waiting with answers.
I swallowed hard. Jesus looked past me into the realms beyond.
Tell the stranger on the bridge, the one you will meet later. He thinks no one would miss him. He thinks I am far, but I have stood beside him through every silent cry. Tell him there is still purpose. I am not done with his story.
There was no limit to the compassion in his voice. No disgust, no frustration, only pursuit, only love.
And when you return, Juan, do not carry fear, carry compassion. This is not just a warning, it is an invitation. The Father's table is set, the feast is free, but the night is nearly here.
I stared at the veil. I could sense it thinning. My time there was almost over. Will they listen, I asked, even after everything? He smiled, not the kind of smile that dismisses pain, but the kind that holds your trembling hand.
Some will mock, some will laugh, some will forget, but others will remember me through you. And for those it will be worth everything.
My soul burned. Not with fear, not with pressure, but with clarity. I didn't need to save anyone. I just needed to speak.
Your life. Juan was never meant to be ordinary. You were not just a surgeon. You were always a messenger. Now go and tell them, I am coming.
The wind began to stir. Light wrapped around me like a robe. I could feel the veil starting to pull me back. My heartbeat was returning. My body was calling. But before the shift completed, I looked back one more time. Please, I said, before I go, will you hold me once more? He opened his arms.
I have always held you, my son, even when you couldn't feel it, and when you returned to the storm. Remember this embrace. Speak from this place, and chains will break.
And with that, he let go. Or maybe I did. And I began to fall upward. I woke to the sound of someone sobbing softly. It wasn't my mother. It wasn't a friend. It was the nurse. She had one hand covering her mouth and another gripping the edge of the bed like it was the only thing anchoring her to the room. I blinked, disoriented, as beeping monitors returned to my ears like rain after a long drought. My chest ached, my head spun, but my spirit remembered. She gasped when she saw my eyes open. "You're awake?" she whispered, like she didn't believe it. "You were gone. We couldn't find your pulse for almost 3 minutes." I looked at her, and suddenly I knew. This was This was the nurse, the one Jesus had told me about. "You prayed," I said, my voice cracked and raw. "Last week, for your mom." She froze. The color drained from her face. I kept going. "You skipped dinner to give a patient your food. You asked God if he still sees you." She stepped back, her lips trembling. How do you know that? I smiled, not my smile, his smile through me, because he heard you. Tears streamed down her face. She dropped to her knees at the foot of my bed, shaking her head. No one knew that. I didn't even say it aloud. He did, I whispered. Jesus did. She began to weep. Not because I was alive, but because she had just been seen, truly seen, for the first time in years. I didn't preach. I didn't quote scripture. I just held her hand and let the weight of heaven flow between us. Hours later, when my body stabilized, the doctor in charge told me I needed rest. But I asked for a phone, a video call. I had to speak to my mother. It was 3:47 a.m. in Cebu. She answered on the first ring. Anak, her voice cracked. Anak, is it really you? Mama. I said, my chest tight with emotion. He heard you. She didn't speak. She just covered her mouth and began to cry. Jesus, I continued. He told me he misses your midnight talks. He saw every prayer, every tear. He said your whisper was louder in heaven than shouting in stadiums. She broke down. My aunt came into frame confused, holding a rosary. My mom looked at her and whispered, Jesus talked to my son. He remembered me. I felt the veil open again for a moment, not with light, but with purpose. Mama, he never left. You were never alone. Even when you thought your faith was small, it moved mountains in places you couldn't see. That night, my mother worshipped in her small kitchen in Cebu, like the ceiling had split open. And I knew her prayers weren't just for me anymore. They were for a nation. A few days later, back in recovery, I got a message from an old friend, Ray, my classmate from med school. The guy who always cracked jokes too loud, laughed too hard, and never answered serious questions straight. He called. Bro, I saw your story online, he said. The hospital report, you flatlined. What happened? I paused, then I told him. Everything. And when I finished, there was silence on the other end. Bro, he said quietly, you know I was going to kill myself 2 weeks ago. My heart stopped. I went up to the rooftop of my condo in BGC. I stood there for 30 minutes. The only reason I didn't jump was because my dog started barking from the window. Loud, like crazy. I thought, okay, Lord, I get it. But I didn't know if he really meant it, if he actually cared. But then you called me. I wiped my eyes. Ray, he told me about you, I said. He wasn't angry. He was waiting. He didn't answer for a while. Then he whispered, what do I do now? You don't have to do anything, I told him. Just say yes. He's already waiting at your door. That night, Ray surrendered his life to Jesus over a video call. No lights, no altar, no choir, just surrender. The loudest man I knew sat still in reverent silence. 2 weeks later, I went back to the Philippines to finish my healing. But healing wasn't just for my bones, it was for people. I was walking near a bridge in Manila one morning. Something told me to stop. I didn't know why. Then I saw him, a man in his late 40s. Dirty clothes, empty stare, standing at the edge, 1 foot already over the rail. I felt it again, the voice. This is the stranger on the bridge. I walked toward him, slowly, gently. I said, Kuya, do you feel invisible? He didn't even turn. Because you're not, I said. I know you think no one sees you, that no one would care if you were gone. But someone does. He always has. He turned to me, eyes red, cheeks sunken. Who? Jesus, I said. He told me about you before I woke up. His mouth opened, but no sound came. He said, you've been crying in silence for years, I continued. He said, you think you're a mistake, but he made you on purpose. He's not mad. He's not far. He's been beside you every time you broke. The man collapsed to the pavement. He didn't say a word. He just wept. And I knew this is what I had been sent back for. Not to build a platform, not to go viral, but to speak to hearts one by one.
Tell them I see them. Tell them I hear them. Tell them I know their name even when the world forgets.
That's what Jesus asked of me, and that's what I'm doing now. Before I returned, before my eyes opened to the pale lights of a hospital room, Jesus gave me something I can never forget. Not a sword, not a crown, not a title. He gave me a moment, We stood together once more near the edge of the veil. I knew this was goodbye, but it didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like being released with purpose. I looked at him and asked what I had not dared to say before. Will I forget all this when I wake up? Will I remember you the same? He smiled, not with pity, but with understanding.
Your memory may fade, Juan, but the imprint will remain. The fire I have placed inside you cannot be extinguished. It will speak even when your mouth is silent.
I nodded slowly. I didn't want to lose him again, not even for a second. That fear, that ache, it rose in my chest like a child clinging to their father. Will you be with me when I feel far again, when life gets loud, when suffering comes back? He didn't step closer this time. He stepped within.
I am not a place you visit. I am a presence that remains, even in the hospital room, even in the traffic, even in the middle of a panic attack at 2 a.m., I will be there.
The wind changed around us, like the atmosphere itself was bowing. He lifted his hand, and in his palm I saw the scars again. They pulsed not with pain, but with power, the kind of power that chose love over wrath, the kind of power that took nails and offered mercy.
Tell them, Juan, not just that I am real, but that I am near. Tell them the door is still open. Tell them I am still waiting.
I felt something settle over my shoulders. Not weight, but commissioning. Like a garment made of oil and thunder. Like purpose stitched in silence. He placed his hand over my chest again. This time the warmth sank even deeper.
Speak from this place. Let your life become an altar. Let your compassion become a mirror. Show them me through you.
I tried to respond, but my throat closed. I could feel the pull now. Earth calling me back. My body aching for breath. Time restarting like a clock that had been frozen just long enough. He looked at me one last time.
And Juan, never be ashamed of the broken parts. I use the fractures to let the light through.
A single tear ran down his cheek. I wasn't sure if it was mine or his. I'll go, I whispered. Even if they don't believe me, even if they laugh, I'll still go.
That's why I chose you, because you said yes, even with trembling hands.
The veil began to blur. Light surrounded him, but he didn't fade. He stayed clear, constant, sovereign.
Go now, my son, and tell them. I never stopped loving them, not for a single moment.
And then, with the gentlest release, I fell back into the world of beeping machines, into the voice of a nurse shouting for help, into the arms of my mother, whispering my name like a prayer. I gasped. Air slammed into my lungs like a crashing wave. My chest jerked. My arms flailed. My eyes flew open as if light had been locked out for years and now suddenly returned. The room was chaos, beeping machines, nurses shouting in multiple languages, hands on my chest. One was crying. One was calling for a defibrillator, and my mother. She was already on her knees, praying louder than the sirens outside. He's back, one nurse yelled. Vital signs returning. They had no idea. They were measuring numbers, heart rate, oxygen saturation, BP. But what came back wasn't just flesh and breath. It was fire. I blinked, looking around. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. I was in the same bed, the same body. But the world had shifted. The veil was thinner now. Mama, I whispered. She stood instantly, trembling hands over her mouth. Anak, you're awake. I nodded slowly. I couldn't say much, not yet, but I could feel the words rising. He's real, I said through cracked lips. She frowned, unsure. Jesus, I whispered again, he's real. And just like that, the hospital faded away. Not physically, but spiritually. I was no longer in survival mode. I was in testimony mode. The nurse who had prayed silently for her mother leaned in. I looked at her and said the words he gave me. He heard you. She froze. Again. I added, he said your name before mine. You are not invisible. Her eyes welled, no questions, just tears. The doctor came next. He was kind, professional, but skeptical. You were clinically dead for about 3 minutes, he said. But somehow your system reactivated on its own. No shock, no adrenaline. You shouldn't be awake. I shouldn't, I agreed. But someone woke me. He chuckled nervously. Well, I guess you're lucky. No, Doc, I said with strength returning to my voice. I'm loved. That afternoon, I asked for a Bible. No one had one. So I asked for internet. I opened my mother's favorite verse, Isaiah 43, and read it aloud. Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine. Silence in the room. And then I told them. The veil, the encounter, the people Jesus told me about, the love that shattered me, healed me, and now burned inside me like wildfire. Word spread. Nurses passed notes to one another. He died and came back with a message. Doctors came to observe, pretending to check vitals, but really just listening. A maintenance worker paused outside my door and asked shyly, Sir Totuba, you saw the Lord. I looked him in the eye and said, I didn't just see him, I felt him, I heard him. And he knows your name too. Weeks passed. I returned home to Cebu. My mother prepared the same sinigang she always did, but this time she made me sit and rest. You came back from the dead, she said. You're not lifting a single spoon unless Jesus himself asks you to. I laughed for the first time in what felt like years, but rest was not retreat. My voice became sharper, softer, fuller. People began to invite me to speak first at our small church, then at schools, then at online conferences. I didn't give theological lectures, I gave testimony. Pure, unpolished, alive. And every time I spoke, I'd close my eyes and return to that moment, that presence, that voice.
Speak from this place, Juan, and chains will break.
It didn't take long for opposition to come. Online critics called it emotional manipulation drama, hallucination from lack of oxygen. Some said I made it up for fame. Others said it was just coincidence that I woke up. I didn't argue, because no one could argue with the lives that changed. A janitor at the hospital gave her life to Jesus after hearing me speak. A suicidal student canceled his plan after watching my video. A man on a bridge received prayer because a stranger who heard my testimony stopped to check on him just in case. Miracles didn't look like lightning and thunder. They looked like answered texts, like quiet conversions, like weeping in the back row. One day during a quiet morning prayer, I asked the Lord if he was pleased. There was no vision, no veil, just this.
Well done, my son. Keep speaking. I am with you until the end.
I closed my eyes and smiled. I was no longer just a doctor. I was no longer just a man who died and came back. I was a witness, and I would never be silent again.